You're here because you want to get smart, fast on complex topics, right? You want the key insights without feeling like you're drowning in details.
Exactly.
That's pretty much what we're aiming for today. We're taking a really fascinating experiment in enterprise sales decision making and pulling out the crucial nuggets, the things you can actually use, hopefully with a few aha moments along the way.
That's right. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding, well, why big companies make the buying choices they do. It can seem pretty opaque sometimes.
Definitely.
We've got a really interesting piece as our foundation today, an article featured by Rally. It's called "I Simulated the Impossible Buying Committee, Then Convinced Them to Buy."
And the title basically gives the game away, doesn't it?
Very much.
We're diving into this like ingenious simulation where the author created this incredibly challenging fictional buying committee, really trying to unlock the secrets of successful enterprise sales.
Hmm.
So our mission today is to explore how this simulation was built, what happened during it, and maybe most importantly, to extract the core principles that you could apply, whether you're in sales, marketing, or frankly, any situation where you need to influence a group of people.
Okay, so let's start with the problem the author was actually trying to solve.
Uh,
If you've ever tried to sell something significant to a large company, this will probably sound familiar.
oh, yeah.
That feeling that you're just trying to herd cats, you know? You've got enthusiastic supporters, everything seems to be moving forward.
And then, bam, silence. The deal just vanishes.
Exactly. It disappears.
It's that super frustrating experience where you think you have buy-in. The author gives a great example. The product team, even the VPs at a prospect company, they were excited about their analytics solution.
Right. Things look good.
But then just complete radio silence. And it turned out later there were all these differing opinions from like a team lead, another VP, even a stakeholder who wasn't really in the loop at first.
It really shows how opaque and unpredictable those internal decision processes can be. You rarely see the whole picture from the outside.
No, you really don't.
And what's fascinating here, or maybe terrifying depending on your job, are the high stakes involved in these enterprise deals. A single win or loss can make or break a quarter.
Yeah, massive impact. So you can see why the author wanted to find a repeatable strategy, right? A playbook for navigating this complexity. Something beyond just getting lucky.
Totally understandable. They needed something more reliable.
They even looked into some pretty interesting concepts like marketing memetics, how ideas spread, and selling in vectors, trying to figure out the underlying forces influencing these big organizations.
Yeah, it suggests a real hunger to get beyond just the surface level sales tactics and really understand the fundamental dynamics at play.
Right.
And there's this really telling anecdote in the article about a pivotal moment where just one sentence actually turned the tide in a major deal.
Just one sentence. Wow.
Yeah. The author was able to show a senior stakeholder how their multi-million-dollar project wouldn't actually solve their core issue. And they back it up with a concrete example of another company that had made a similar costly mistake.
Ooh, that takes guts. Challenging someone's big project like that.
It does, but think about that challenging someone's fundamental assumptions, but with solid evidence.
It really highlights the power of, well, deeply understanding a client's problem, sometimes maybe even better than they understand them themselves, and being willing to have those tough conversations.
Exactly. That kind of insight, that honesty can be incredibly powerful. And in this case, it led to a huge contract months down the line.
So it wasn't an immediate win, but it planted the seed.
Right. So it was a mix of experiences, plus reading an intriguing article about simulating an election to flip virtual voters that sparked the core idea.
Okay. So why not apply a similar simulation approach to understand the messiness of an enterprise buying committee?
Exactly. Create a kind of controlled chaos, to see what makes these complex decisions actually tick.
Right, to essentially build a model of that impossible committee. So how did they actually go about constructing this fictional group? What were the key ingredients?
Well, the main goal was to recreate that feeling of herding cats, that chaotic dynamic you get with multiple stakeholders, each with their own agenda. And they deliberately chose a challenging scenario to really amplify this.
Yeah.
A company right in the middle of an acquisition.
Oh, wow.
Think about the inherent tensions there, right? People worried about their jobs, maybe resentments, definitely conflicting priorities between the two merging companies.
Yeah, that adds a whole layer of complexity.
As the author says, real-world deals are rarely clean and simple. so they leaned into the messiness.
It's like throwing gasoline on the fire. Yeah. You've already got a complex situation, and then you add the uncertainty and politics of a merger.
Exactly. So to populate this environment, they started with GPT to generate some initial ideas, mandates, mindsets, potential objections, sort of the raw material.
Okay, the basic outlines.
And then they layered on Rally. What's fascinating is how Rally let them take those initial sketches and flesh them out into really fully realized personas.
So more than just job titles.
Oh yeah, we're talking detailed backstories, clear responsibilities, even specific quirks for each individual. The author actually talks about wanting to create a cast that would generate high drama, bureaucratic fireworks, and merger mayhem.
Haha, sounds intense.
And all within a cost-cutting environment, too. It was designed for maximum friction.
It sounds like assembling a dysfunctional family for a high-stakes Thanksgiving dinner, but for business.
Kinda, yeah. And they even included those small but crucial real-world details that can make or break a deal. Pre-existing biases, it was a natural deal maker or breaker, hidden agendas.
Things that aren't usually on the org chart.
Exactly. Interpersonal relationships, office politics. They even wrote sample dialogue to really bring these characters to life.
That level of detail seems critical for a simulation like this to be meaningful.
Absolutely. You're not just dealing with abstract roles, you're interacting with simulated people who have their own perspectives, fears, motivations, including those hidden agendas, and office politics acknowledges that, well, decisions in big companies are rarely just about logic and data.
Yeah, there's always the human element. And to really crank up the complexity, they intentionally built in opposing motivations within the committee.
They did. So you've got the CFO laser focused on cost reduction, bumping heads with marketing who needs budget to, drive growth.
Classic tension.
Right. Then the product lead is pushing for system unification after the merger, while the founder is worried about losing the unique magic of their original startup.
Ah, the culture clash.
Yep. And then you have operations scrutinizing every little detail, while the M&A team is just focused on the big picture acquisition targets. It sounds like a recipe for gridlock.
It really does. It perfectly mirrors the reality of so many enterprise deals, doesn't it? You're trying to navigate this landscape where people have fundamentally different, sometimes totally contradictory goals.
Exactly. And the author emphasizes that in the real world, you're often guessing who really holds the power and what their unspoken priorities are.
Which makes this simulation potentially so valuable. And they added another layer too, right? This wedge issue.
Yeah. The smaller company being acquired has this terrible legacy analytics system. Apparently, everyone agrees it's a nightmare.
Okay.
But nobody wants to allocate budget to actually fix it. So the sales proposal doesn't just have to offer a good solution. It has to convincingly demonstrate enough value to justify the cost in this very tight financial climate.
Got it. So it's a specific known pain point, but with the serious budget hurdle attached.
Precisely. It forces the proposal to be more than just a list of features. It has to directly answer that known problem and its budgetary implications.
Yeah.
Really raises the stakes for the solution being pitched.
Okay, so we have this incredibly complex simulated buying committee, just packed with conflicting interests. Now, the crucial part. How do they actually test their approach against it? Tell us about the voting and the iterative messaging.
Right. So after each simulated pitch attempt, the committee members, the personas, cast a simple yes buy or no reject offer vote.
Okay, straightforward.
But they did it via a deliberately ambiguous synthetic email. That ambiguity was key, actually. It mirrors the kind of vague internal emails that often circulate in real companies, the ones that lead to more discussion and interpretation.
Ah, okay. So not a detailed breakdown of why, just a simple yes-no. That definitely sounds more realistic sometimes. And this voting process gave them immediate feedback on each version of the pitch.
Exactly. It allowed the author to see, almost in real time, how even subtle changes in messaging were affecting the sentiment of different stakeholders.
Right.
Like who was warming up, who was digging their heels in.
So the simulation became this dynamic learning tool. Each vote was data.
Pretty much. A very fast feedback loop.
And they ran these votes across 4 different models, including fast and smart modes. What was the difference there?
Well, the author observed that while all the models picked up on key narrative points, especially around one persona's struggles with the acquisition, the smart mode, particularly using the OpenAI model, showed more nuanced behavior. It seemed to factor in things like reputational risk, strategic alignment, even emotional considerations more heavily.
Interesting. Compared to the fast mode.
Yeah, the fast mode seemed more focused on the immediate transactional aspects. So because of this, the author decided to focus their efforts on converting the smart mode committee, believing it gave a more realistic picture of complex human decision-making in a business context.
Makes sense. So they tested 5 different core narratives in their pitches: work reduction, long-term ROI, minimal disruption, innovation, and customer-centric.
That's right, trying different angles to see what might stick.
And what were the initial results? Did one narrative just knock it out of the park?
Not really, not initially. Certain narratives definitely resonated with specific members, which was valuable information in itself, giving clues about their individual priorities.
Okay, so some traction.
Some traction, yes. But there was one particularly resistant voice, CFO Catherine. No matter which narrative they tried,
Let me guess. No.
consistently no.
Mm.
It really underscored the crucial role and often the very cost-conscious mindset of the financial gatekeepers in these big deals.
That's such a critical insight right there. There's almost always that one key stakeholder whose main focus is the bottom line, and their no can outweigh everyone else's yes.
Absolutely.
So how did they try to get a deeper understanding of Catherine's resistance and maybe the objections of the others too?
This is where the objection decoder came in really handy. It was a tool the author used to analyze and synthesize the nuances of each persona's concerns, based only on their vote responses and any simulated comments.
So without even knowing their official job title or anything?
Right. They didn't need to know the roles up front for this part. Think of it like a detective piecing together motives just from alibis and brief statements.
Okay, interesting. So just from the yes or no and maybe a short simulated comment, they could figure out what was driving each person.
Pretty much. It gave them this clear, almost visual map of the core concerns across the whole committee. For instance, it became obvious marketing and product were receptive to pitches about lead gen and unifying platforms,
Uh-huh.
while Catherine's consistent no votes strongly pointed to her focus on cost control and the lack of immediate tangible ROI.
Got it.
And the founders' worry about losing the company identity or operations being concerned about hidden fees, those things also became clear through this analysis.
And armed with this really detailed understanding of everyone's specific sticking points, they could then craft a much more targeted pitch, one that hit every concern directly.
Precisely. They took those insights, incorporated them into the messaging, and developed this refined proposal that systematically tackled each identified objection.
And the result?
A big shift in sentiment. The author describes this near-universal wave of enthusiasm. Almost everyone flipped their vote to yes.
Almost everyone, except Catherine.
You guessed it.
Mm-hmm.
Except for Catherine.
Of course. She remained the final hurdle, still focused on cost savings and fiscal responsibility.
Yep. It really reinforces that idea that some core objections might be just deeply ingrained, almost part of the role itself.
So true. But the story doesn't end with her saying no, right? How did they finally win her over? This is the key part.
It is. And this is where a crucial piece of, detective work paid off.
Well,
While reviewing Catherine's previous responses, the author noticed a seemingly minor comment she'd made.
oh.
Something like, if Eva backs this, I might reconsider.
A potential opening? Who's Eva?
Eva was another persona on the committee,
Yeah.
and this seemingly throwaway line turned out to be the absolute key. The author had intentionally built into Catherine's persona a hidden detail. She really respected Eva's insights, especially at the board level.
Okay. So there was a hidden influencer, someone whose opinion Catherine secretly valued more highly. That is so true to life. It's not always the formal power structure, is it? It's those informal networks.
Absolutely, that hidden dynamic.
Mhm.
So the author ran one final test, presented the pitch again,
Uh-huh.
but this time they explicitly included or referenced Eva's positive endorsement from a previous round's feedback.
Okay, leveraging that internal influence.
Exactly. And finally, Catherine changed her vote.
Success.
Unanimous approval. The impossible committee finally said, yes, take our money.
Wow, that's such a powerful demonstration of needing to understand individual motivations, finding those key influencers, even the hidden ones.
Mm-hmm. And the author really emphasizes that this whole successful simulation highlights the potential of tools like Rally, not just for sales, but maybe as a training ground for navigating these real-world enterprise complexities.
Yeah, it offers a low-stakes place to experiment, right? To try different strategies, see what happens with your messaging almost immediately, without the real-world pressure and financial risk.
Exactly. No deals lost in the process.
Okay, so let's distill this down. For our listeners, what are the big takeaways from this really fascinating experiment? Things they can apply, whether they're selling, marketing, or just trying to get things done in any complex group.
Okay, I think the first crucial takeaway is simply the power of iterative messaging. You can't just have one pitch.
Right.
Constantly refining your communication based on feedback is absolutely essential. What works for one person might completely fall flat or even, trigger a negative reaction with someone else.
Yeah, you have to be adaptable.
You do. You need to be willing to tailor your message to different audiences, their specific concerns. Think about it. When people feel genuinely heard and understood, they're just far more likely to be open to your ideas.
That's a great point. It's not about finding the one perfect pitch, it's about the process of listening and adjusting.
Exactly. Secondly, objection mapping is an incredibly valuable skill. Having a systematic way to understand the real reasons behind resistance lets you craft much more targeted, much more persuasive responses.
So digging deeper than the surface objection.
Right. It's not enough to just hear it costs too much. You need to understand the why behind it. Is it budget cycle? Is it perceived value? Is it risk? Addressing the root cause is key.
It's like being that detective again, looking for the clues in their responses to uncover the real motivations and hesitations.
Exactly right. And the third key takeaway, I think, is that emotional nuance truly matters. The experiment showed the more sophisticated models, the ones considering emotional and strategic factors, reflected reality better.
Uh-huh.
It's a good reminder that decisions aren't always purely logical. Far from it sometimes. Emotions, relationships, personal biases, past experiences, they all play a huge role.
So true.
Being attuned to that emotional landscape, showing empathy, understanding the human element that can be incredibly powerful in building trust and rapport.
So it's not just the facts and figures, it's understanding the people involved in the decision.
Absolutely. And finally, Catherine, CFO Catherine, serves as that critical reminder. There will almost always be a gatekeeper.
The final boss.
Kind of. Some objections are so deeply rooted in someone's priorities or their specific role that honestly no amount of persuasion might change their mind directly.
Yeah, that's a tough reality.
It is. You need to be prepared for potentially unyielding resistance from certain quarters, and maybe focus on identifying and influencing the key stakeholders who are receptive, or who might influence that gatekeeper, like Eva did for Catherine.
So sometimes the direct route isn't the best one. You need to find the influencer.
Exactly. Sometimes your energy is better spent focusing on those who can influence the ultimate decision maker rather than banging your head against a brick wall.
That's a really important dose of pragmatism. You can't win every single person over directly, so you need to be strategic about where you focus your efforts.
Precisely.
Okay, so bringing it all together, what's the overarching insight here from this deep dive into the simulated impossible buying committee?
I think the core insight is that while enterprise decision-making often feels chaotic, maybe even random, it's not entirely unpredictable. By thoughtfully simulating these complex environments, like the author did, by diligently refining our messaging based on feedback, and by really understanding the individual motivations, including the hidden ones of everyone involved, we can gain a much clearer map of how to navigate these high-stakes situations.
Yeah.
And significantly improve our chances of actually achieving the outcome we want.
And for you, listening right now, we hope this deep dive has given you a concentrated, insightful look into a pretty sophisticated approach to strategy, really, offering practical principles you could apply in all sorts of situations, professional or even personal, where you need to influence a group.
Yeah, definitely. Which leads us to a final thought for you to maybe mull over.
Yeah.
Think about a complex decision you're navigating right now, or maybe one you see coming up.
How might you apply these ideas? Identifying all the stakeholders, really digging into their diverse, maybe hidden motivations, and iteratively refining your approach. What impossible buying committee might you be facing in your own life or work? And what steps could you maybe take next to better understand its dynamics and find those potential points of influence?
Step into the simulation, a virtual audience of role-playing characters, each with a unique perspective. This is more than playful fantasy. Welcome to Rally, a private crowd feedback platform designed to offer swift, authentic insights. Within these digital personas, you can pose nearly any question. Is your marketing pitch resonating? Does your design spark delight? Here you receive direct, honest feedback, free of the echo chamber and groupthink often found elsewhere. Marketers validate campaigns before launch. Innovators refine product concepts. Entrepreneurs test prototypes across broad or niche specific digital audiences, all in a safe and private environment. Rally's simulated panel never tires, and remains ready to guide you toward sharper, everyday decisions. By combining simplicity with insights from the crowd, Rally removes the barriers between your questions and your answers. All the wisdom, none of the scars.